All right, ladies and gentlemen, away we go on a Tuesday edition of the Rob Brown Show right here on the Fan Upstate. What's up, y'all? Welcome in.
Great to have you back once again. I am Rob Brown, my man T2, the Timinator, Tim Snow, in the building as well, holding it down on the other side of the metaphorical glass. How y'all doing, ladies and gentlemen? Everybody in good shape? Everybody having the time of their lives, I hope, as we race through a short week tomorrow, the final day of broadcasting for us on the radio broadcast, on the radio schedule, as obviously we'll be off on Thursday for Thanksgiving. We will be off on Friday to spend some time with friends and fam. And then next week, I'll be taking some vacation days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, to hang out down in Florida with the fam. And then we will return next Thursday and Friday to get set up for conference championship weekend. So that's your broadcasting schedule as it stands right now. We have got a lot to get into on the radio broadcast today. Team USA's first match yesterday in the World Cup, a very disappointing 1-1 draw against Wales. Got the goal from Timothy Weah, assisted by Christian Pulisic early in that match, and felt like the Americans were going to get out of there with a win. Quite frankly, probably should have had a lead of a couple of goals, at least in that one, but some other opportunities to finish that the Americans did just not capitalize on. And then late in the game, for reasons that remain beyond my comprehension, the Americans just decided, I should say Greg Berhalter just decided, that we were going to stop doing everything that had worked. We were going to stop doing everything that had pointed us in the right direction. We were going to stop doing everything that built up a 1-0 lead with a number of opportunities to build on that 1-0 lead. And we were going to shift to a defensive mindset. We, instead of continuing to press, continuing to challenge their defensive backs, the weak spot on the squad, instead of continuing to press the attack with the superior speed advantage that we very clearly had between our front line and their back, we decided instead to send in Jordan Morris with his busted up knees, to leave Gio Reyna on the bench, arguably the best player on the team, not named Christian Pulisic. We decided instead to just completely shift the mentality of that game, and it ended up biting us in the ass because Gareth Bale, who exactly – in fact, I got to give credit to my man Joey B. Joe Bright was in the stream yesterday, and he said, let's call it what it is, right? Let's call it what it is. We're going to get one early. We're going to maintain possession, and then Gareth Bale is going to break our heart at the very end. And that is exactly what ended up happening. Gareth Bale, late in that game, gets the penalty inside of the box on a completely unnecessary challenge from Walker Zimmer, who decided – Walker Zimmerman decided, with Gareth Bale facing away from the goal, to try to run through his chest cavity and pick up possession on the other side. And it ends up going PK to the best player on the Welsh team. He buries the PK past Matt Turner, who, by the way, played a fantastic game and did everything right yesterday. Played a fantastic game and did everything right. In fact, should have probably likely saved that PK, but it was such an absolute rocket of a PK off the foot of Gareth Bale that it came off the hand of Matt Turner. There was just not enough to deflect it out. It goes draw 1-1 in the 83rd minute, and then the Americans could not figure out a way to finish it up. So we end up yesterday with a 1-point result after the draw against Wales, which is, on one hand, I looked at it and went, this is kind of the direction that we somewhat expected, right? Like, that shot got called. There were a number of people yesterday saying, hey, look, 1-1 draw, 2-2 draw, something in that neighborhood, because this Welsh team is playing with the exact same energy, the exact same emotion that we are. We are still reeling from missing the World Cup 4 years ago. It has been 8 years since we played in one. It is a disappointing situation for Wales to be back for the first time in 6.5 decades. They are going to bring something to the pitch as well, and they did. And it ended up being, honestly, if that is a match between any two other teams, I'd probably walk out of there going, what a hell of a match, man. What a spectacular match. What a phenomenal match. But as an American, wildly disappointing that for whatever reason, we decided to keep our best players on the bench as reservists instead of putting out the attacking side that we absolutely should have and allowing Wales not just to climb back into that one, but to take away 2 points that I think are critically important. Listen, you lose that game, you get no points. It's one thing, right? Less because you got no points, right? Somebody said, what's the biggest difference? What's the biggest difference between 0 points and 1 point? It's not the difference between 0 points and 1 point. The difference is in Wales having 3 points or 0 points, right? Or 3 points and 1 point. Because basically the situation that we have now created in this World Cup is that it is not Wales versus the U.S. It is now who loses by fewer goals to England and who wins by more goals versus Iran. And the unfortunate part about that is it would have been exceptionally nice to be able to go out and be comfortable with a draw against England. Now you've got to play for a win, right? And before anybody goes, well, why wouldn't you just sit back, right? Sit back, play defensive game, make sure that if you take a 0-0 draw or even a 1-0 loss to England, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, except for, as you saw yesterday, playing in a defensive formation, playing with a defensive mentality is our undoing, right? That's what cost us that match yesterday. That's what the defensive mentality yesterday is what cost us that match. If we stay aggressive, if we stay on the front foot, if we stay pushing up the pitch, we've got a really good chance we probably win that game. But we shifted to a defensive mentality. We decided to lay back. We decided only to counter when we had possession, right? And I guess that's what's killed me, because that has been the Berhalter way since he was named the manager of this team. We want to win by possession. Well, listen, I know that this almost sounds hypocritical because in years past, even under Jurgen Klinsmann, I used to get very upset at this team because it kind of always felt like the mentality was spray and pray, right? Get the ball, kick it down towards the other goal, and then send our fastest 7 guys down there to try to just outrun them to a scoring opportunity. And it never worked. It never worked because there was no organization down on that end, right? There are games when you can out-athlete the other team. You don't really need to go through game planning. You don't really need to play with any level strategy or tactics. You just need to go out there and out-athlete the team that you are more athletic than. Happens in the NBA, happens in the NFL. Sometimes you just turn your best players loose to go be the best players on the pitch, and it works out for you. But at this level of international football, that really doesn't. And it didn't work for a very long time for the U.S. men's national team. And now we find ourselves right back in a situation where you change the tactics in a way that don't suit up with the formation you're throwing out there. I was actually really happy with the starting 11 we rolled out yesterday. Very happy with the starting 11 we rolled out yesterday. I thought it was a good starting 11. I thought you had the right combination of servers and finishers. I thought your back line was as well organized as it could be and complementary of each other. I thought we were in a really good spot yesterday. And then, for whatever reason, we get the lead. We play about 72 minutes of aggressive tactical football and take advantage of the speed advantage we have on that side of the field. And then in minute number 73, for whatever reason, we decided instead to go back to the back foot, to sit back and let Wales play ahead to us. And you don't even have to be a big-time soccer fan to see what went wrong in that, right? You don't have to be a big-time soccer fan to understand why that got so squirrely, why it got so sideways from us. I was listening to and reading through the comments of Greg Berhalter after the game. He got asked, why did Gio Reyna not play, right? Gio Reyna has played in Borussia Dortmund's final 3 games before the World Cup, was expected to be a contributor. He said after the game that he is 100% healthy and was unsure why he didn't get used. He said, I feel really good. I feel great. I feel fine. Greg doesn't have to tell me why he didn't put me in or why he does. You're right. We sent in midfielder Brendan Aronson. We sent in Haji Wright as a striker, subbed on DeAndre Yedlin as a right back, and sent in Kellen Acosta in the midfield, all while holding a 1-0 lead. And then, for whatever reason, in the 88th minute, he took off Timothy Weah and he put on Jordan Morris. Now, I'm not saying in a 1-1 situation that Gio Reyna would have come in and won the game for us, right? I don't know that that would have been the case. It would have been a big ask to send the guy out there with 2 minutes of regular time. And at the time, I guess like 7 to 8 minutes of stoppage. It ended up being a full 9 plus some. But I can't understand how you decided that Haji Wright was the guy to send in that situation. Why is Kellen Acosta coming on in the midfield? And that's it. Like, I just don't understand it. We sent on a group. We sent on a group that was meant to play a defensive posture and hold possession at a point when they have already showed you in Wales that they want to push the hell out of the ball. We'll send on some guys that can make them pay for that. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it then. I thought, go sleep on it. Take a deep breath, see what happens. Like maybe you'll wake up and you'll have that moment of revelation. Because I'm a fan too. And I think every sports fan has this thing that we all do where our emotions end up overriding our logic, our ration when it comes to sports, right? Like you lose a game and you're hypercritical of things and you don't necessarily think them out because you're caught up in that emotion. And yeah, I sat yesterday with about 100 other U.S. soccer fans in a bar in the Village and West on the west side of Greenville, and that bar was deflated, dude. When Gareth Bale sent the PK through to net us all even at 1-1, that bar was absolutely deflated. The chants went away, the screaming went away, the hype went away. The air came out of the room, and it stayed out of the room. And there is a massive difference that comes from a team coming off of a big win versus a team that is coming off of a draw, right? Like, think about this. We talked quite a bit yesterday. About South Carolina's win over Tennessee, right? And we'll talk more about it later on today now that we've had a chance to rewatch the game, get some X's and O's down, et cetera, et cetera. We have had quite a chance to really think about it. And in doing so, we talked to some Clemson fans yesterday. And there were a lot of them that told me, some off the air, some off the air, some on, that they were much more apprehensive. They were much more apprehensive about this game now than they were 4 days ago, right? Clemson's got a chance to reach the longest winning streak in the history of this rivalry, right? Sitting at 7, moving it to 8. Longest streak is 7 right now. Happened twice, this time and once before. And the other day, we ended up in a spot after the win where a lot of Clemson fans, I think, despite being 2 touchdown favorites over South Carolina, are looking and going, damn. All of a sudden, this offense clicked. They found something, right? They found something. Now, Tennessee's defense is not as good as Clemson's, but let's not sit here and pretend like Clemson's is dominant either, right? But the mentality of South Carolina after that win and the mentality of the team lined up across from them is different, right? If the Americans go out there and they finish a couple, right? They stick 2 more goals in and they win that game 3-1. Now, all of a sudden, England is looking at the game on Friday and going, hey, this American bunch, these Yanks, they figured out how to finish, right? That's that lack of creative finishes lately has really been the undoing of the American side. And now they're not, right? They're still confident. They're still looking at us as if, and accurately, we are the inferior team in this spot. How different is the mentality around that game if the Americans go out yesterday and do what they should have done and finish Bloody Wales off? I know I'm using their stuff now. Bloody Wales! Should have finished them, but we didn't. And now England's going to come out with full confidence that they are still leaps and bounds better than us. And for the record, they are, right? But again, compare it, contrast it to the Clemson-South Carolina game. If South Carolina goes out there and does what every one of us thought was going to happen and beats South Carolina by 50, right? Clemson's coming into this game on Saturday like, yeah, we good. But now Clemson's got to have a little bit in that back pocket, a little bit of, dude, the offense found something. They scored in bunches, right? Every possession they had, with the exception of 1 and the 2 that ended the halves, every possession they had with the exception of 1 and the 2 that ended the halves ended in a touchdown. You're telling me there's not a couple of Clemson Tiger fans right now that are looking at that like, ruh-roh, they might have found something. That mentality is important, man. That mentality is important. Just that little bit of fear in the back of the head that, if they come out and play their best game, it can change the way you approach a game. All right, I'm not doing 3 hours of World Cup talk, although I could after, how about the Argentinians this morning? One of the favorites to lift the World Cup at the end of the season, lose 2-1 to Saudi Arabia. Messi and Argentina absolutely stunned this morning, had 2 goals disallowed due to offsides, were called offsides 7 times in that game, and they drop a 2-1 result to Saudi Arabia. That is unbelievable. Unbelievably bad for Lionel Messi and the Argentinians. All right, World Cup people, you got to crack at it today. I could be wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and guess. Let me pump up the old ego here. I'm going to go ahead and guess I am the only sports talk radio show in the upstate that's going to give the World Cup its time today. I could be wrong. There might be a couple other people that dabble in it, but I believe I'm the only sports talk radio show in the upstate that is going to give soccer its face time on the show today. Everybody else is going to spend their 3 hours on one game, and that's fine. We're going to hit on that game too because I am well-rounded, both mentally and physically. So you U.S. soccer fans, this is your day. If you have ever said, why is there not more soccer? Why is there not more soccer? When you've got Clemson right up the road, you're reigning, defending, undisputed NCAA men's football champions. That would be football, not football, soccer. Right up the road, we got the NCAA champions. We've got a team that has been to 3 consecutive USL League One finals and a USL League One semifinal. If you have asked, why is there not more soccer on the radio in the upstate? Well, here's your chance. Here's your chance to show me. Here's your chance to show my programming director. Here's your chance to show my corporate overlords that you want soccer, and you will respond to it if it's on the radio. 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663, 844-FAN phone, or the preferred home services text line at 71307, 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, and we'll read them on the air. Be a part of the radio broadcast today. We want you. We need you. Let's take a break. When we come back, got a few more things to get into. Obviously, it is technically Thursday for us because we're off on Thursday and Friday. So today is Thursday. Wednesday will be Friday, which means we have got to go ahead and start breaking down our college football weekend. The playoff rankings will all but be settled this weekend. So who do I like? Who don't I like? I'll tell you that and more coming up. My man T2, Tim Snow, the Timinator, is on the other side of the glass. I am Rob Brown, and you are listening to The Rob Brown Show right here on the Fan Upstate.
Always streaming wherever you are on the Odyssey app. Make the Fan Upstate a favorite.
All right, stream, stay right there. We will be right back.
Elon in the first round of the
fine premium.
All right, stream, we're back. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well.
It's available right
now.
Only at Bartesian.com.
Good morning.
That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail for Bartesian's best deal ever. Only at Bartesian.com/cocktail.
Kenny May with special guests Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann.
And then I just realized that it was Keith, myself, Mike McQuaid, Ed Schimmel, and that was it against management.
It was World Cup, right?
In their words, we don't want another Chris Berman.
That's the last thing you'd want. Somebody completely successful who's recognized everywhere and put your network on the map. And the, I don't know, $75 million a year to make you in profit. Well, you don't want that.
Download and subscribe to Hey Maine, available on the Odyssey app and everywhere you get your podcast.
A sinking foundation can cause you to make quick decisions.
World Cup with Rob Brown.
Be wrong.
Rob Brown Show.
Owner of CMT Foundations.
Many of our clients come to us after a bad experience with another company. From high-pressure sales techniques to misinformation, we've heard it all. If you're facing foundation problems, take a breath and take time to get a second opinion. We offer free estimates and reliable advice.
Call 864-581-3341. CNT Foundations. Your foundation experts.
Sponsored by South Carolina Education Lottery. Did you know that since 2002, more than 2.4 million lottery-funded scholarships, such as Life, Hope, and Palmetto Fellow scholarships, have been awarded to South Carolina's students? Playing for fun is a win for education. Visit sceducationlottery.com/educationwins for more information.
Get in the game on the Rob Brown Show.
Only on the Fan. The Fan Upstate.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the Rob Brown Show rolls on. Great to be with you. If you'd like to be a part of the radio broadcast, you can do it. 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. Of course, you can text the Professional Home Services text line at 71307. Preferred Home Services text line 71307. Start your text with FAN. FAN will read them on the air. Got a couple of comments coming in about the World Cup match yesterday. The Americans play to a 1-1 draw with the Welsh. That is good for a point. The English put up a 6-2 scoreline in victory over Iran. So not only do they have the group lead with 3 points, but they're also now sitting on a +4 goal differential. The English will more than likely be moving on pending some sort of catastrophe. The Americans and the Welsh are effectively now in a 2-game competition. That competition is going to be who loses by fewer goals to England and who defeats Iran by more goals, which means that I've got no doubt at this point that the Americans are going to need to throw every bit of their offense ahead, full speed at Iran. You got to go win that game like 5-1, right? The Iranians are gonna they're gonna sneak a goal by you at some point. They will against the Welsh too. But you got to go win that game like 4-1, and then you've got to do everything you can to snag the draw against England. But again, defensive mentality got us beat yesterday. I hope that we don't go full park the bus against England because they're good enough. They're still put a couple through. My goal would be is if you're going to lose to England, lose to them like 4-2, 5-3, right? You're going to give up a few because they're that good, but you got to get a couple of back. You got to get a couple back. It's not an option. You got to get a couple back. So we'll see how that plays out. All right. Let's get to a couple of other things. After their win over the University of Tennessee on Saturday, Dabo Swinney has had some nice things to say about South Carolina, and I think it's fair, right? Like, I know a lot of Clemson fans aren't going to love their head coach saying really nice things about their heated rival, but I appreciated it out of Dabo Swinney because I think saying anything else about that game would have been bulletin board material, right? Like, Dabo's not a guy who's going to want to give free bulletin board material over to Shane's guys as they get set up for a Saturday daytime rivalry match, a noon o'clock kick in this one. And I don't think that this is going to be one that Dabo's going to want to give any sort of hype up, any gas to the Gamecocks.
Anyway, he said that after he got home from the 40-10 win over Miami, that he watched, quote, a good bit, end quote, of South Carolina versus Tennessee and said, quote, they just really, really played a complete ball game in all facets. Then as they got going, they just kept pouring it on. Tennessee, it wasn't their night, and you've got to give South Carolina all the credit for that. It's exactly what I said, right? I saw a number of Clemson fans talking about how the win wasn't that impressive, right? The win's not that impressive, and it's not that impressive because Tennessee's defense is bad. Tennessee's defense is not playoff caliber, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But here's the thing. Nobody else, Georgia included, nobody else had the sort of success drive by drive that the Gamecocks of South Carolina had. Nobody else had that sort of success. So pointed out in the last segment. Every drive, with the exception of one to open up the second half where they went 3 and out and punted. And I think it's fair that everybody at that point was like, all right, here's the collapse, right? Like, here's the meltdown. You know it's coming for the Gamecocks. Here it is. And it didn't. They got the ball back. Their next ensuing possession, touchdown, 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 touchdown. And then they had 2 drives that didn't end in touchdowns because they ended in going to the break, right? First half, end of the first half, end of the second half, both with the Gamecocks in possession of the football. So, again, Tennessee's defense isn't good. I'm not arguing that it was. In fact, I said from the beginning that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, South Carolina needs to put up some points in this matchup on a bad defense to prove to me that they got a crack at Clemson. Clemson's defense is, you know, they've been hovering around the 27th, 28th best defense in the country this year. It ain't good, it ain't bad. It's squarely in the middle of bowl eligible teams, right? They did that and then a little bit more. Dabo said Spencer Rattler, quote, played outstanding, end quote. Rattler led the Gamecocks to touchdowns on 9 of 11 drives, 63 points, the most ever by an unranked team against an AP top 5 in opponent, and spread the ball around really, really well, right? Every playmaker wearing garnet and black touched the rock in that game. Swinney said, quote, he can move around well, he's really good in the pocket, and he can make every throw. He throws really well on the move also. Just a really good football player. He's everything you like about a quarterback. He's got a great arm, end quote. Swinney went on to say, quote, this is a game where it doesn't matter what your records are. It doesn't matter if you're coming off 3 big wins in a row or 3 big losses in a row. This is a game where you just throw all that stuff out. It's all about this game. It really is about how you play in these 4 quarters. It's a goal of its own and a season of its own. And as I said last night, it's the same for them. It's a fun game to be a part of, a fun week to get ready, and a game where both teams are going to put everything they've got into finding a way to win. That's fact. Listen, I have never had a bad thing to say about the way that Dabo Swinney talks about opponents, right? The only complaint I've ever had about Dabo and the way he grabs the mic is when he talks about himself, right? When he talks about his program. The little old Clemson, it's us versus the world stuff when your team is has been a consensus top 5 team for a freaking decade, basically. But I got nothing but respect for the way he said this, and he's spot on accurate, right? He's spot on accurate. But like I said, to wrap up that last segment, if you're a Clemson fan and you are looking at this South Carolina team and what they did Saturday against Tennessee, and you tell me that you're not a little bit apprehensive about what this game looks like now, you're I mean, you're a diehard. I guess I'll give you that. You're a diehard. And I respect that aspect of it. But I also think you're kind of fooling yourself a little bit, right? How are you going to look at a team that went 63, beat a top 5 team by nearly 30 and go, oh, we got this, right? We got this. When on the same field in the daytime, you had a crack of a game against Syracuse, right? Now, again, you're not as good as your best game and you're not as bad as your worst game, right? Clemson is not as bad as they looked against Notre Dame. They're not as bad as they looked against Syracuse. 1-1 in those two. But South Carolina is in orbit right now, right? They are in orbit right now about how well they played against Tennessee. The reality is they're not as good as their best game either. The truth about the Gamecocks sits somewhere between what they did against Tennessee and what they did against Mizzou or Florida, right? Went down to Florida, one touchdown, and it was scored on special teams. Their offense could not find the back of the end zone to save their lives in that game. The truth is they are somewhere in the middle of all of that. Clemson is not as good as their best game either. But the good news is Clemson did exactly what they were supposed to do against Miami. South Carolina stood out against Tennessee. And if you get the average of Clemson's best and worst, and you get the average of South Carolina's best and worst, the reality of the situation is that Clemson's average is better than South Carolina's average on a game-by-game basis. Saw a South Carolina fan ask yesterday when I put up the points. Tigers favored by 14. 2 touchdown favorites at the house. Well, how if we put up 63 are they 2 touchdown favorites? Because the truth, right? If I just take the last 3 games, 4 games, Mizzou, Vandy, Florida, and Tennessee. What Tennessee did stands way the hell out. Sure. The reason it stands out so much, the reason it is as dramatic as it is solely because of the fact that you put up 10 against the bad Mizzou team. You put up 0 offensively against a quite average Florida team, who, by the way, went on the road and lost to Vanderbilt the next weekend, right? And you let Vandy chip away at that lead and drive back into the game in that one. I would say 4 performances, 1 beyond excellent for the Gamecocks, 2 that were tragic, and 1 that was pedestrian. The Florida game was tragic. The Mizzou game was tragic. I don't see a way to spin it any other way. Florida was tragic. Mizzou was tragic. I'm not Scott Steiner. I got a bad time with fractions. But if I average out 1 excellent result, 1 mediocre result, and 2 tragic results, realistically, that says you're okay. That's why Clemson's a 14-point favorite. That's why Vegas likes them to have this game effectively over by the end of the third quarter. But, as has been pointed out a million times, it will a million times more, when it comes down to it, it's a rivalry game. I don't like cliches in sports. I think they're overrated. I think they're overused. I think people lean on them too harshly. But rivalry games, you can throw the record books out the window. And we'll see what happens. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to X and O the hell out of this. I'm going to spend tonight watching back some of those games, both Carolina and Clemson. I'm going to spend the time to dive into both of those games, both of those teams in their last few games to see if I can pick out some stuff that I like to play out one way or the other. So tomorrow, heavy X's and O's on that one. Texter says, all things aside, how do you not see how impressive it was? It's impressive on all fronts except for the defense argument, which is lame considering all the other high points you've covered. Hashtag just respected. Are you talking about me or the people talking to me? because I have been saying since literally yesterday, this was an amazing performance from South Carolina. I spent an hour and 20 minutes on this performance yesterday, which in radio terms is bad. You don't spend an hour on, you don't spend 2 back-to-back segments on any one thing.
He did. I remember.
Yeah. T2 was here.
I was.
An hour and 20 minutes on that win because
a whole hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, because of how damn impressive it was, right? It was that impressive. But again, we as sports fans do this thing where we get caught up and think, hey, well, whatever we did this past weekend, that's what we are now, right? Like I did it in the first segment with U.S. Soccer. I'm like, okay, 1-1 draw. We shouldn't have done that. That was bad. And now we're going to get killed by England. I don't know. Granted, it's different because that was one game in a tournament. But I look at fans from the Gamecocks going, oh yeah, we got Clemson. Now I'm like, yeah, hold up,
the
man.
Fan Upstate. This
hold
is the
up.
Rob Brown Show.
It was a great performance. I'm not arguing with that, but let's not sit here and pretend like that's what to expect out of this team moving forward, right? We ain't there yet. It was a great performance. And on the flip side, Clemson 40-10 winners over Miami, and that was fantastic, but it was on the same field that Syracuse took them to the limit. So anyway, we'll see. We're going to break this game down X's and O's wise in great depth and detail on the show tomorrow. Let's do this. Let's run to a break real quick. Brian in Spartanburg, you hold the line. I'm going to come to you straight out of the break. Your phone calls are welcome. 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. We'll get your call right out of the break. Brian, everybody else get in line on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
They're out now.
All right. Skrilla, happy CFP Tuesday, buddy. Get our new rankings tonight. We'll see what those look like. I feel like they're pretty ingrained at this point, right? Like we know what they're going to look like. Rob Shambo, can't wait. Man, I miss Jim. Jim put up, Brandon, Jim put up an Instagram post yesterday announcing Rob Shambo, and I was like, next Monday. But, next Monday, Boathouse. Let's go. Going to be a good time. Can't wait. Nate said, at least we're not Argentina in a loss. Yeah, that Saudi Arabia was plus 1,800 to win that match. Plus 1,800 to win that match. 180 to 1. That's insane. But that's one of those games that you put money on Saudi Arabia, I'd have called you insane. Sports. Dude, it's fun. It's exciting. Yeah. And this game's been wild. There's been a lot of back and forth in this game. Like a lot of games you'll get where one team doesn't score, but they hold like 80% of the possession. And those games can be a little bit boring. Denmark and Tunisia have been absolutely giving it to each other. I love this match. This has been fun. Brandon says somebody touchdown that ran out of fireworks. Oh, yeah, nobody saw that coming, man. Especially the guy who orders the fireworks. It can be. It can be. Still do. There's a hockey team here. Yeah, now they're the Swamp Rabbits. Go Bids, go. Come on, text me. I'll get you free tickets. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Text me. I'll get you hooked up. No shortage of that at the minor league level.
Yeah. So Skylar's dead set on being a Saints fan and a Georgia Bulldogs fan.
So that's a spectrum.
Combination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get him over to being a Terrapins fan. Oh, and he likes Clemson. If he had to pick one, it'd be Clemson. I've been trying to watch the games with him when I'm not here.
Joe A is locking his lost debit card with the Chase mobile app. Joe B is cruising toward his new ride with Odyssey. And Joe C's Chase Banker is helping him budget his next. Tools that help protect and support for what's next. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Messaging and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank and a member of FDIC.
And now an important message from music superstar Willie Nelson. I've been fighting for legalization of the one thing that can bring comfort to millions. And of course, I'm talking about Skechers.
Can we stop the commercial? Willie, I don't think Skechers are illegal anywhere.
Really? But they feel so good.
No, you can wear them anywhere, Willie.
Well, ask the Skechers. Skechers comfort feels so good because Skechers is the comfort technology company and has all the fits and features you need for ultimate comfort. Find Skechers at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold. It's Black Friday all week at Staples with huge savings.
All right, so Keegan, let's see. In fact, let's look at what the line on that game is right now. Auburn v. Alabama. I'm going Alabama minus. Well, this is a tough one. I'm going to go Alabama minus 15.5, Keegan. 15.5. Let's see what the line looks like right now. Oh, Keegan, minus 22. Oh, woof. Woof. My man Keegan, noted Auburn fan, popped up into the Facebook chat, which you guys can watch the stream live at facebook.com/thefanupstate, twitter.com/thefanupstate, or by searching and subscribing to The Rob Brown Show on either YouTube or Twitch. Keegan said, this is prime opportunity for Auburn to snag a win from Bama. Cinderella story with Cadillac Williams, all the drama, all the feels. And then I was like, hey, you know what? Let's go look at that. I said probably 17.5 points. Bama favored minus 22 in this one. Why, Rob, do you bring up the Auburn Tigers? Well, I'm glad you asked, hypothetical listener I made up for this exact scenario. It is because the smoke is up in the air right now. The smoke is up in the air right now that Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin is going to step down as the Rebels coach later this week to become the Auburn Tigers' next head coach. John Sokoloff put this tweet out that kind of got this whole thing started. He is the WCBI News sports director who covers Mississippi State Ole Miss and is a Heisman voter down there in the great state of Mississippi. Love Mississippi. Mississippi. It's a beautiful state, man. I love Mississippi. Gulf Coast of Mississippi is about as laid back and beautiful as you're going to find. Anyway, Lane tweeted out immediately after, that's news to me, John. Nice sources. No emoji, devil frowny emoji, chair emoji, fork and knife and plate emoji. Anyway, that's interesting. Blah, blah, blah. Auburn's in shambles. Love you, Keegan. But Bama minus 22. And growing, by the way. And growing. Which means even at minus 22, the bettors are riding the tide right now. That's ugly. That's ugly. See, Carolina fans could be worse. Bama's a 2-loss team. and minus 22 over their rivals. It could be worse, Gamecock fans. You're at least within a couple of touchdowns here, you know? At least within a couple of touchdowns, which is a solid effort. All right, couple of texts. Texter says, no, I'm agreeing with you, Rob. You're right. That's in terms of the knuckleheads who won't respect the impressive win. Anybody who doesn't respect what South Carolina did on Saturday night, I got no time for it. With all due respect. I got no time for it, man. It was a hell of a win, and it's a win that should be talked about at length. Anybody who's got who does not see what Carolina did as nothing short of outstanding, I got no time for, man. None at all. That was a beautiful win. Another texter says, what is Clemson's best game? They don't really have one so far. I don't know, man. The 40-10 win over Miami, like I said, was it shocking? Was it stellar? Was it something that we were going to talk about for an hour? No. It was exactly the win that it should have been, right? 41-10 over Georgia Tech. Exactly what it should have been. 35-12 against Furman, right? I don't really know about that one in that despite it being a 35-12 win, Furman actually put up some pretty impressive numbers offensively, right? 51-45 overtime, good win over Wake Forest. Is it a great win? No, it's the win I expected. 30-20 win over NC State. Great win? No, win I expected, right? And I guess that's what I'm saying here is from top to bottom, Clemson has done pretty much everything I expected with the exception of not losing to Notre Dame, because I don't even mind the loss to Notre Dame, but getting handled by Notre Dame, even if it is in their house, getting handled by Notre Dame was the worst L, right? Clemson has done everything expected. Here's the and here's the thing, real quick, before the Gamecock fans get all up in my grill about it. Let's not pretend like South Carolina did everything that was expected of them. And I've seen that, right? Like, we came into the year, and I said what? Expectations were 6-6 bowl eligibility. 7-4 was a possibility, but not probable. And anything better than that would be considered a massive W for Shane Beamer. I looked down the schedule. I expected you to lose to Arkansas. Expected you to lose to Georgia. Expected you to beat Charlotte and NC State. Beating Kentucky was unexpected, sure, but they were doing without Will Levis, the best one of the best three quarterbacks in the draft upcoming. Texas A&M sucks. You should have beat Mizzou. You did not. You should have beat Vanderbilt. You did, but you let them crawl back into it. You should not have gotten worked by Florida the way you got worked by Florida. But then you shocked everybody with the win over Tennessee, right? I guess what I'm saying is Carolina fans hit me with, what is Clemson's best and worst to compare and contrast to? It's not like South Carolina did anything crazy special with the exception of the Tennessee game, right? That's why I think this game is still leaning Clemson, but there's a lot of time between here and Saturday. We'll break it down further on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Hey, do me a favor. Grab Brian and tell him that I was screwed up on time and that if he'll hold, I will get him as soon as the next hour starts. Grab Brian on the phone. Tell him I apologize, but that I will get him immediately coming out of the break.
Hey, Brian, we are so sorry. We will get you back on the next segment, which will be at the top of the
Right when we come on the air.
Right when we come back on the air. All right, sorry about that.
Did he say he's hanging on?
Yeah.
Okay.
What time do y'all normally go out? Is it 54:30?
Yeah, but I mean it's kind of fluid for the end of the first 2 hours. Just do the math to get us right.
That's not a problem. I just wanted to know exactly what time.
Bear back stream, don't go anywhere. We got some phone calls and we'll have some fun when we come back. All right, we're back, kids.
Oh, it was 30 seconds off.
That's all right. It's 15 seconds off. That's perfectly fine.
Well, this is a minute.
Then it's 45 off.
45, yeah.
And what he says to me is, guys, we're going to take a walk. So they walk from the football building, and they go to Williams-Brice Stadium. And then they walk up to the
It's all good.
deck, and they're all sitting there.
The only one you can't do that for is the last hour, yeah.
I was trying to get my practice in for 2 hours. I used to do that for Charlie, too.
To come sit here in 100 degrees to watch you play football. I thought it was really well taken. I thought it was a really, really strong message. And it showed kind of the community sense and the community feel.
The important thing, all the promos that needed to play played. So that's good.
Offsides with Mark Bryan. Upstate.
40 seconds to be exact. Don't forget about your phone call.
Yep, going straight to it. All right, screwed up my clock, so I shorted myself on time last segment, and I wanted to give Brian his time in the sun. Phone line's open, 844-326-3663. I've turned it over to the Berg, where Brian is hanging on for us. What's up, Brian? Welcome back to the show, brother.
Hey, guys. How are you today?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. I'm a Clemson fan. I'm going to ruffle a few feathers, no pun intended.
Fire away, partner.
I wanted to say I'm first of all, take absolutely nothing away from South Carolina. They played a fantastic game. I wanted to be upfront about that. They played as good as they can possibly play. I'm glad this happened this weekend because it's good for people inside the SEC to see why people outside of the SEC, and I mean fans of the Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, ACC, why we get so tired of hearing people beat the SEC drum. All year long, all you heard was how good Tennessee was and how unbeatable they were. Now, keep in mind, they have the 19th best roster in the country. They don't have a top 5 roster, the 19th best roster in the country. Also, they don't have a top 50 defense. They were never, make no mistake about it, they were never a national championship contender, no matter what all the media pumped up. Meanwhile, the team that you're about to play all year long, everyone has said is they're overrated. But they're a 14.5-point favorite over you when you just handled Tennessee. And to put that into perspective, that conference that everybody talks trash about, the ACC, we have played 8 ACC games this year, meaning Clemson. I'm a Clemson fan. We have played 8 ACC games this year. We have been a single-digit favorite in 5 of those 8 games. That means there are only 2 teams we've played all year in the ACC that we were a smaller or a bigger favorite than we are over South Carolina. South Carolina is a middle-of-the-road ACC team. And when we walk away from South Carolina this weekend, which we are going to, make no mistake about it, I cannot wait to hear the national narrative. Oh, South Carolina come out flat. They come out great against Tennessee, and then they come out flat. No, the truth is that they pump the SEC up like it's unbeatable, and it's not. They have 2 or 3 really good teams, and then just like every other conference, they have a bunch of mediocre teams. But I appreciate it, guys. I enjoy the show.
You got it, Brian. Thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate you checking in. At 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. I would start by saying the Tennessee-South Carolina game, right? Let's not pretend it was anything more than a one-off, right? Because here's the thing. You said the SEC has 2 or 3 really good teams across the top. If you're going to say that, I would ask you, outside of Georgia, who those top 2 or 3 really good teams are, right? Like, is it LSU? Because that's a 2-loss team. Is it Alabama? Because that's a 2-loss team. And one of those losses was to the University of Tennessee, right? So I'm not I don't have a huge problem with your take there, Brian. The question mark that I have is, if you are going to tell me that the SEC has 2 or 3 really good teams as opposed to like a really solid, but not great, but really solid top 5, who would be those other teams? Because, listen, Georgia is heads and shoulders above everybody else. I don't have a problem with that take, right? I've been saying that for a number of weeks. And I stand by that from the beginning. Georgia is the best team in college football. Now, that's not to say that they're not beatable by an Ohio State, which I think is probably the only team standing that give Georgia a run. But my question mark would be, if it's Georgia and then everybody else, then who would you say is number 2, right? Everybody else has got 2 losses. And remember, Alabama lost to this Tennessee team. Same Tennessee team. Alabama also lost to LSU. That's a 7-2 team. One of, and then I do think this helps Brian's argument as I kind of talk through it. One of those L's was to another ACC team in Florida State, a team that Clemson defeated. But LSU also lost to Tennessee in a blowout dub for the Volunteers, 40-13. LSU would then, of course, go on to beat Alabama. So I think it's fair in that case to ask the question here. If you're going to tell me they're a top-heavy conference, and by the way, I have said the SEC for years is a top-heavy conference. They have been carried by Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. And really just LSU during the championship run when they had Joey B. But Alabama, Georgia, and LSU have by and large carried the conference. I'm not disagreeing with it. But I think you, Brian, to some degree, I say this with all due respect, I think to some degree you have fallen into a trap that I have warned people against falling into many, many times. Do not fall for the transitive property of football, right? Because A beats B and B beats C does not mean that A is greater than C. Because C comes out greater than A lot in college football. That's why they play the game, right? What I will say is that South Carolina dominating Tennessee is not an implication that Tennessee's not good, right? Now, they'll be different now that they've lost Hendon Hooker to a torn ACL. You took the engine out of the race car, right? Milton's a fine quarterback as a backup, a senior. He's got some experience. As Josh Heupel said yesterday, not a lot of teams have the good fortune of having a backup quarterback that has as much experience as Milton does. But Hendon Hooker's a Heisman finalist. Even with a torn ACL and even with that L, Hendon Hooker is likely going to be at the New York Athletic Club at the end of the year and listening to see if it is his name that will be called as the Heisman Trophy winner. That's a good Tennessee football team. Are they Georgia good? No, I think we've seen that now, right? Are they LSU good? Yeah, they beat the hell out of LSU. Are they Bama good? Yeah, they beat Alabama, right? Granted, close game, but they beat Alabama. The point here is that I think you're looking at the transitive property of football and you're trying to paint an entire conference with it. And I to some degree, maybe the same with the ACC, right? Because Clemson, again, as you pointed out, has been in some battles in the ACC, but has walked in as 8.5, 9-point favorites in most of them. But let's not pretend that Clemson hasn't been toting the ACC's baggage for a number of years as well, right? But the ACC has been represented because of Clemson, because of what Dabo and the Tigers have been for almost a decade now. I would not get caught up in the SEC's not that good and we're about to prove it, right? Again, I look at South Carolina. I did this last hour. I look at South Carolina, and that was a great win over Tennessee. I kind of feel like, and I could be wrong here, Brian, I kind of feel like you are trying to take a little bit away from what that win was. That was I don't use the term, that was a miraculous win by the Gamecocks. Texter just said, Tennessee versus Clemson in a neutral field. Tennessee is 6.5-point favorites, maybe more. If Hendon Hooker is playing, I agree with that. If Tennessee and Clemson play and Hendon Hooker's playing, I'll take Tennessee minus 6.5. That's not to say I would be shocked or surprised if Clemson won the game. I would not be. But yes, Tennessee would be favored in that game, just like they were favored in a lot of other games, just like they beat Alabama, just like they beat LSU. By the way, an LSU team that, as far as I'm concerned, with the win over the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC championship game, has better odds than Clemson to climb in. I think a 2-loss SEC team would get in. Now, that might be because the College Football Playoff Committee carries a little bit of water for the SEC. I'm not arguing with that. I think they absolutely do. But I think LSU beating Georgia gives them the same, if not better, odds to get into the playoff than Clemson as a 1-loss ACC team. Sincerely. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens moving forward. I am excited about this game, though. I am more excited about this game than I was a week ago. Clemson is still a 2-touchdown favorite. And if I'm being real, because if you want the realest breakdown I can give you of a game, it's going to be how Vegas looks and how I look at Vegas. I would absolutely consider taking Clemson minus 14 in this game. Now, I just looked it up. It has been pushed to Clemson minus 14.5. It's only a hook, right? But the fact that bettors were confident with Clemson minus 14 enough to put the money on them to give them the hook of 14.5 shows me that most of the folks are still banking on Clemson here, right? Now, that money I will be real, that money will probably level out now that they've attached the 0.5 to the minus 14. Now that Clemson's got the hook and it took the push off the table, you're going to see a lot of people who will start to slow down on betting the Tigers in this one. But leaving the push on the table at minus 14, that'll push some people into a bet. I have made a lot of bets in my life that I made because the push was there, right? 14's around the line, I take Clemson. You leave it at an even 14, I'm taking that bet. Not because I'm super duper confident that Clemson's going to clear the 14, but because 14 on the table, if South Carolina puts up something late to bring it within 14 on the table leaves me with the chance to get out of there with my money back on the push. 14.5, there's no push there. And I would even say if it went down to 13.5, if bettors jumped on late and went with the Gamecocks at plus 14 and did so enough that it dropped that 14 down to 13.5, I'm probably even more confident about that. Either way, despite what South Carolina did, Vegas is going, as I did in the last segment, hold up, wait a minute, slow your roll. It was a great win. It is a win for the Gamecocks that we will be talking about for years, right? That's the caliber of win. Much like Steven Garcia and the Gamecocks getting the better of Alabama a few years ago. The fact that we still talk about that, right? Every time South Carolina's in a big SEC deficit, Gamecock fans want to go crow about the win over Alabama. Well, this is going to join those ranks. But it was the best game the Gamecocks have played in years. And it is the exception, not the rule. The exception, not the rule. All right, let's get some text and tweets in here before we take a break. 844 fan phone, 844-326-3663, 844-326-3663 is the number if you want to be a part of the radio broadcast. Couple of texts that have come in. Rob, it started at 16, brother. It's dropped. Did it? Okay. I like that. That's good. I mean, that means you got our limit. I did not see it at 16. When I checked it on Sunday, it was already at 14 and a half or 14. So if it opened at 16 and there was that big of a drop right out of the gate, that means that bettors have settled it down to 14, now back up to 14 and a half. I mean, it's great if you're confident in gambling the Gamecocks, right? Great if you're betting the Gamecocks, not great if you're hoping for an outright win. Texter said, South Carolina's not supposed to beat Clemson. If we put up a good game and lose, I'm not mad. I am going to be mad if Clemson somehow sneaks in. They don't deserve that boat. Yeah, listen. I'm not going to sit here and make the argument that Clemson's going to be in a game with Georgia. And if they are in a game with Georgia, that they would be in a game with both Georgia and Ohio State. Clemson v. TCU, I'm very interested in, right? Especially after Baylor went wall-to-wall. But Baylor opened up the offense. Baylor was spreading the ball around. Do you trust DJ to do that? Solid maybe for me. Clemson getting in and getting TCU opening round would be enormous, but it won't happen because if Clemson gets in, they're going in as the 4. And if they go in as the 4, they're going to catch Georgia, and I don't think that ends well, but we'll see. Texter says, Rob, Georgia is the only team playing defense in the SEC. Clemson would do well against Tennessee. Oh, listen, let me clarify that. Tennessee with Hendon Hooker would beat Clemson, and it would be like a 42-35 game, like 54-47 type game. It would be a hell of a lot of points. Clemson v. Tennessee, I'll take Tennessee, but I'll take the over. The hefty bet for me would be the over, not the line. I wish we could see that game. I'd enjoy that game. Texture says, Rob, that Brian dude is trying to say Clemson is a championship team and that the ACC is stronger than the SEC. He is lost. Go Gamecocks. Brian, he says Clemson's reign is over this week. All right. Listen, the ACC looked really good at the beginning of the year. Looked really good at the beginning of the year, right? Wake, NC State, Syracuse, Clemson. FSU beating LSU kind of helped that argument. But as the season's progressed and teams have gotten better, Wake has fallen out. NC State has fallen out. Syracuse has fallen out. Now you get some help if you're Clemson in the form of Florida State climbing into the top 16 in the AP poll. We'll see where they check in the playoff rankings tonight. No, the SEC is a stronger conference. It is not like heads and shoulders and then another head bigger than the ACC, but it's a better conference, top to bottom. I won't argue with that. Texas says Clemson has not had a best game, and that's concerning for me as a Carolina fan. And I'm also concerned our gas tank might be empty. It is a noon game, so that's a bonus. Calmer envoy. First off, great use of the word envoy. I approve of that. Second off, and I pointed this out on the show yesterday, every South Carolina L this season came in the daytime. Every South Carolina L came in the daytime. Every South Carolina win came at night. And while that includes home and away, man, I don't know. Do you want? I get the point, right? Kind of a trade-off. On one hand, you play this game at 7:30. You're in front of a raucous Death Valley, but all your wins are at night. You play this game in the daytime. And Death Valley's still going to be loud, but it won't be as loud as it would be with a 7:30 kick. But all your L's have come in the daytime. I don't know how much that matters. Texter says ESPN money is with the SEC. Of course, they will blow the SEC horn. Yeah. I mean, again, the SEC is going to get a little extra love, more so than other conferences. But at the same time, with what Georgia has done, with what Tennessee has done up till this weekend, what Bama has done, what LSU has done. I mean, again, what other conference do you put up there, right? It ain't the Big Ten. They got Ohio State and Michigan. And honestly, even Michigan doesn't look as great after they got into a scrape fight with the Illini. It's Ohio State now. Pac-12 with USC and UCLA up top. Oregon disappointed with a second L. Utah fell off after they got beat by Florida. Like, is that a conference you put up there? And then there's the ACC, right? You got Clemson in a playoff push. You got Florida State in the top 16, but you putting FSU on the field with Bama right now? I mean, they beat LSU, but it was in week 1. And as I pointed out, keep in mind, FSU had a game the week before. They had a tune-up game. LSU did not. LSU came into that game with no regular football experience yet. FSU already had a win on the books. If LSU and FSU played again today, I'll take LSU minus 10. Right? So, they're going to toot the SEC's horn, but in some cases, the SEC deserves to have the horn tooted to some degree. Texture said, hey, Brian, this is a perfect example of why the SEC is so dominant. Anyone can beat anyone at any time. See, I don't agree with that statement entirely, right? Like, I get where you're going with it, and I get what you're leaning on there. But is that really true? Anybody can beat anybody? Like, Georgia's beat everybody. Wouldn't they have an L if that was accurate? Tennessee was a team that kind of got called out a little bit. They beat Alabama, but they lose to South Carolina. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I entirely agree with that. I think the SEC, like everybody else, is top heavy. Don't tell me Mississippi State's throwing punches with Georgia. They're not. Don't tell me Ole Miss is throwing punches with Georgia. They're not. Don't tell me Auburn's throwing punches with Georgia. They didn't. Right? That's a big time. That is a big time SEC argument that doesn't hold as much water as you think it does. Texture says, Rob, give us an LSU FSU rematch in a playoff game. LSU smokes the Noles. No, I just said LSU minus 10.5. Maybe I'd say 9.5. LSU minus 9.5 if they match up again, man. LSU minus 9.5 if they match up again. It's a great win on the record for the ACC. Does that win by itself put the ACC in SEC territory? No, it doesn't. Sorry. For the record, I want it to, right? For the record, I want it to. I would love for that game to be a reason that we pump the ACC up to where the SEC is, but it's just not. It's just not. It was a good win, but if that game gets played week 9 instead of week 1, with FSU having a week 0 game, LSU minus 9.5, and like a comfortable 9.5, I think. Texas says, Rob, the ESPN money with the SEC is BS. They also have an ACC network. Try again, ACC fan. I'm just a fan of good college football with some parity in it, right? If I'm a fan of anything, it's a fan of chaos. Give me chaos. Give me wild. That's what I'm looking for. What do you think does more business, the ACC net or the SEC net? Be honest with me. What do you think does more business, ACC net or SEC net? What do you think, what conference you think brings in more money right now, the ACC or the SEC? Come on, man. Let's be honest with that. Texture says, Rob, second best SEC versus second best ACC. What happens, Tennessee v. North Carolina? Without Hendon Hooker, I actually think that's a pretty good game. With Hendon Hooker, I like Tennessee by 10, 9.5, 10. But yeah, I get it. I'm not the one you're arguing with here, right? I'm not the one you're arguing with. I have said and will say again, the SEC is a better conference than the ACC. Do I think they're untouchable? No. But I also think that's because of Georgia, not anybody else. Clemson can compete with LSU. I believe that. Clemson could compete with Tennessee. I think we've seen that, right? But who else from the ACC would? Who else would the ACC send to compete with the top of the SEC? North Carolina? I like NC. I think NC versus Clemson is going to be a hell of an ACC title game. I might drive up to go watch that. But who else? FSU? You putting FSU out on the field with LSU again? We just said no, and that's the arguably third best team in the SEC, right? All right, we got to take a break. I'm way off the clock. Good job, me. Way to be professional. All right. We'll take that break. I want more. Keep it coming. 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. Text me on the Preferred Home Services text line 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N. Texter says SEC, SEC, SEC. The official SEC chant sponsored by every team that's not Georgia, Bama, or LSU. Back after this on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. Be right back on Liners.
and really profitable, even on the road. I'm Krista Tripp, helping you.
For the latest holiday tech gifts at great prices, Staples has you covered.
I need unbeatable prices on tech for everyone on my nice list.
Staples has you covered with the hottest tech gifts at Black Friday prices. Right now, the new Apple AirPods Pro
I
second
like
generation
blue
is just $199 with the Staples Connect.
Do what?
Plus, save up to $330 off HP, Lenovo, and Asus laptops.
I'm making an overlay for Charlie String.
I got you.
Offers end 11/26. Limit 1 on AirPods. AirPods sale price $2.
Because I'm just good like that.
Are you holding back from buying a home right now because you are worried that maybe your home won't sell, or maybe your home will sell too quickly, or maybe you won't find the home that you are looking for at a fair price because today's market moves fast? Here's the reality. Allen Tate makes it easy. From the start of the process to the finish, they will help you find what you are looking for. They will help you get the financing you're looking for. They will help you insure that home. They will help you close on the home. They will help you sell your home as well. Last year, Allen Tate helped over 20,000 satisfied customers, and now they are ready to help you as well. So whether you are looking to buy, whether you're looking to sell, wherever you are along the home ownership process, Allen Tate is in your corner. Reach out to them right now online at allentate.com, allentate.com.
How would you like to come home to a bartender who will fix you any cocktail you want? I'll have an old fashioned.
I'll have a margarita.
Now you can with the Bartesian Home Cocktail Maker. Bartesian is a sleek machine the size of a coffee maker that makes premium cocktails at the touch of a button. Choose from over 50 different cocktails, from classics to the most exotic premium cocktails served in the best bars today. You'll always get freshly mixed, perfectly balanced cocktails with the Bartesian Cocktail Maker. And now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever at bartesian.com/cocktail. Entertaining? The Bartesian is ideal for parties. No need to stock all kinds of individual mixers for complicated recipes. Every guest gets the cocktail of their choice in seconds. The Bartesian makes a wonderful gift for anyone who loves a fine premium cocktail. Now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever. It's available right now, only at bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail for Bartesian's best deal ever. Only at bartesian.com/cocktail.
We've all kind of gotten used to waiting too long and paying too much for things we need, right? Hey, it's Don with American-made windows, and we're changing that. Thanks to our American suppliers, you can choose your windows now, and we'll install them in less than a month. 1 month. And right now, qualified buyers can get 12 months same as cash. That's no payment for a full year. Visit amwupstate.com or call 334-6030. And remember, the best windows are American-made.
Sponsored by South Carolina Education Lottery. The Mega Millions jackpot for Tuesday is $259 million. Be sure to stop by your local South Carolina Education Lottery retailer and get your ticket today. See SCEducationLottery.com for jackpot odds in a store near you.
More than the scores. Real sports talk for real sports fans.
The Rob Brown Show, now 1980.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. It is the Fan Upstate, 844-FAN phone, 844-FANFO, 844-326-3663. Milton is on the line. How about the Berg, man? Spartanburg representing on the show today. You love to see it. Milton, welcome in, big fella.
Hey, Nelson.
Nelson, I'm sorry, buddy. Nelson, welcome to the show, partner.
No problem. Milton actually sounds better. Maybe I'll change my name.
There you go. We're just here to help the brand, buddy.
Yes, get in on the SEC, ACC things a little bit. One thing people don't think about a lot of times is the money. SEC, you're talking about big schools other than Vanderbilt. Most of these schools are huge schools with a much, much larger fan bases than especially Clemson. Clemson's a small to mid-sized school. They're not very big. They're only 17,000, 18,000 students. I mean, you're looking at, say, Carolina, compare Carolina 60, 70 plus thousand students with a 400,000 person alumni base. The money is not close to being the same. Now, you got North Carolina, which is a state school, which would be a big school, but they're usually not that much of a factor. But all of the schools in the SEC, and with the new television contract they're negotiating, it's estimated that each school's payout every year will be $120+ million. The other conferences, they can't compete with that. But Clemson, as much as I hate Clemson, I'm going to give them their due for what Dabo, or Dabu as I call him, what he's done. And I have a lot of respect for Dabo. I like him. What he's done at Clemson is maybe the greatest coaching story ever in college football. I mean, you just can't do what he's done at Clemson at a school like Clemson. Alabama, it's easy. You got your big schools. It's easier, but he's done something there that's just remarkable. And I will hand him that. But I made a prediction a few years ago. Dabo, he came into Clemson at just the right time. A few years into his stint there, the whole Southeast was in a flux. Tennessee, Carolina, Georgia, Auburn, Florida State, Miami, and other schools were all going through these huge coaching changes. And he was able to get his foot in and do some recruiting and get players that you would never expect him to get. But also predicted as soon as these schools settled their coaching issues, that you would start to see that those recruiting battles go back to those schools in those states. And I think we're starting to see that now. He's starting to lose these recruiting battles because of the established coaches that are being put in place in these other schools. But this Saturday, who knows which Carolina will show up? Who knows which Carolina's offensive line will show up? That, to me, that's the key to this game. Carolina's defensive backs can cover Clemson's receivers, but can they stop the run? They're not great at the run. But if Spencer Rattler has time to throw the ball, which most of the time he does not, he can pick Clemson apart. But that's a big if. I don't know if our offensive line can show up for two weeks in a row. So I'll just leave. And you said something about the stadium. I've been to Clemson before for big games. I've been to Carolina. Carolina's much louder. They play at Tennessee. They play at Georgia. They play at Florida. They're used to playing in stadiums that are extremely loud. So it will be interesting. We will see. But I think that money factor that comes into play when you start talking about the SEC and the ACC competing against each other. And it's also true when you start looking at the other conferences also. The SEC just has a massive money advantage. Anyway, I'll just leave that there. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, Nelson. Thank you. Listen, one of the pitfalls that I think a lot of folks get themselves trapped in when it comes to college football, and I've heard the argument before, right? Like I've even heard it on this station before and this was the big thing about NIL. I don't want college football becoming a business. I don't want it becoming the NFL. I don't want it becoming money being the root of everything. It already is, dude. It already is. The reason that the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Georgias, hell, even when they're bad, the Notre Dames are still able to compete is because, as was just pointed out, and what I think is a correct take, is because of the fact that the money is there to continue to push those programs to the top, right? What's the best way to become a billionaire? Step one, be a millionaire, right? Like that's the old cliche, and it's spot on accurate for a reason. It really is. So I think that's a valid point. I do think that recruiting battles right now are good. I mean, listen, as far as recruiting rankings go, Clemson continues to be a team that's up towards the top. I think right now they are 9th overall. But I also think that Nelson's got a good point there, right? Guess who's one spot ahead of Clemson right now? Florida. Now, I don't know if Billy Napier's the guy or not. I think he's pointed in the right direction, but then they beat the hell out of South Carolina, but then they go lose to Vanderbilt for the first time in Vanderbilt since 1988. Not exaggerating. Florida is ahead of them. Oklahoma is ahead of them. And at the top, Texas is up there at number 5. LSU is up there at number 4. Notre Dame at 3. Georgia 2. And guess who's number 1? The University of Alabama. Now, those are going to change, obviously, because a lot of these kids that are commits, they can decommit, they can move on. Some of them will, based on the results of the program that they are looking at, right? So you're talking about a Texas team that's on the way up. They're going to get better. You're talking about a 2-loss Bama team. If you signed up to go play for Bama because you thought it was a first-class ticket to winning the Southeastern Conference, maybe not, right? Then you got Georgia sitting there at number 2. Number 1 in the playoff rankings. On the way to another national championship effort. Notre Dame. Notre Dame is always going to – Notre Dame is bad. They're not bad now. I mean, they're getting better as the years progressed, right? Like that was an awful loss against Marshall. Awful loss against Marshall. But they're progressively getting better. And they've got the money to back it. They're number 3. LSU at number 4. Is Brian Kelly a long-term solution for LSU after they moved on from the Ed Orgerons of the world? I mean, it certainly looks like it now, right? There's a lot of questions about LSU at the beginning of the year. But then LSU goes out. They beat Bama. They win the SEC West. And you find yourself in a really good position if you're the Tigers to win the SEC this year. They won't because Georgia's a monstrosity. But they're right there in that mix, right? But there's something to that. But I appreciate the phone call, Nelson. Thanks very much. Let me get some text in here. Text says, LOL, all that SEC money, and Clemson has beaten SEC opponent now 7 times in a row and should have been 8 if not for COVID. I believe it is 7 times in a row, even with the break, right? Like they're looking at history now. They're looking at history now. Rob, it's rivalry week, so here you go. Clemson has been whipping the Gamecocks for years now, and it's finally time for it to go the other way around. And I want you to know, Texter, that it took everything I had and then a little bit more to successfully edit that text for on-air purposes. But I appreciate what you did. I appreciate what you did there. Thank you very much. Well done. Well constructed. And on a different pod, I would have read it the way you wrote it. All right? But it is what it is. All right. Let's see. Rob, how bad does FSU dog stomp the Gators on Saturday? I don't know, man. I don't know, right? Like, what has been FSU's kryptonite this year? Quarterbacks that can get outside of the pocket, quarterbacks that can move around a little bit, right? And Florida's quarterback has progressively gotten better. Now, granted, Vanderbilt beat him, right? But he put up 400 yards in the effort. 400 yards. That's a ridiculous number, man. Let's go back. Let me pull his exact numbers for you. Pull the exact numbers off the box sheet for you. Anthony Richardson, 25 to 42, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 bad pick. I mean, kind of is what it is there. Like, for FSU fans, for the ACC as a whole, because, right, if Florida State loses this game to Florida this weekend, you know, we're talking ACC v. SEC this morning, which I hate, but it's y'all's show as much as mine. There's 3 hosts on this show. Me, whoever's sitting in that chair over there, and you guys as host, right? You guys want ACC v. SEC. Here we are. Blah, 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 blah. If FSU loses to Florida, this ACC v. SEC argument is over for the 2022 season. If FSU beats Florida, you know, at least the argument's still there. But this SEC ACC argument, if Florida beats Florida State, it dies. It's over. It's over. It is what it is. All right, let me get to the break because we're way off the clock again. 844-326-3663, 844-FAN-PHONE is the number to be a part of the radio broadcast. You can text us on the Preferred Home Services text line at 71307. What else we got left on the show today? I know you guys are big Aaron Judge fans, set to meet with the San Francisco Giants. Could the Yanks be losing out on an APAL Player of the Year. We'll talk about that. What does that bat mean for the San Francisco Giants in the battle for the NL West, which is getting better by the year? And should the Braves get in on that discussion? Can they? Do they have the cash? We'll break that down later. As we mentioned earlier, in the World Cup opening round, the Americans a 1-1 draw against the Welsh. Should talk about that. It's going to be busy. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. Rob, T2, filling in for the great one. It is the Rob Brown Show right here on the Fan Upstate. All right, stream, where are you guys at? Since we chose violence today, I feel it's important to point out that dressing is better than stuffing. You can't be better than something that is the same thing, Steven. We've talked about this. Dressing and stuffing are the same thing. The only thing that separates them is geography.
No.
Yes,
No.
stuffing's in a turkey, dressing's out of it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
But it's stuffing is stuffed in a turkey.
Right. And dressing dresses the turkey. One, it cannot be better than the other. They're the same thing.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're two different things.
They're not two different things. They're the same thing. Just
They're made
in
differently,
different places.
but they're made differently.
If I spend 2 weeks in Boston and then come back here and you were to say, I like Boston Rob more than Greenville Rob, that's a dumb thing to say.
Well,
It's
that's
the
an
same
opinion.
person. Right, but
It's not a
but
fact.
You have an opinion on the same thing being different based on where it's located.
But that's two different places. They're both states, but that's two different places.
I understand that, but that's my point. Stuffing and dressing, the only thing that separates them is they're located in two different places.
No, it's
Yes.
food. They're both food.
I'm
but
not arguing
they're
that
different types of food.
They are saying stuffing is this and dressing is also this. Stuffing's in the bird. You take the same stuff and put it out of the bird, and we change the name. That's it. That's the only difference. It's the same thing.
Well, one's a stuffing and one's a casserole. He's ready to throw something at me already. I hear you, Kevin. There are some dressings that do taste okay for me, but I grew up with stuffing with bacon in it, and it is so
same
good.
thing.
No, it's not.
It's the same thing.
It's really not. You just haven't had good stuffing. Is what
It's
happened.
the same thing.
He's so mad at me right now. He's mad at me over stuffing.
Timeshare is the only thing that you can buy that you can't tell me how much it's going to cost or when it's going to end. When you buy a timeshare, you give them a blank check to fill.
Ooh, my favorite dessert for Thanksgiving has got to be, well, it's actually a family thing that we make, and I can't really tell you what the name of it is on the air, but my favorite dessert is basically chocolate chip cookies, one layer of that, and then another layer of whipped cream, and then the bottom layer is chocolate pudding, and then it's layered again in that order and layered again. So it's really good. It's my favorite dessert ever. I love pudding. So
including free shipping on everything. Call the Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL for Black Friday.
when the diabetes is that, that's what makes it good, man. You know you're eating right if you're getting that.
time. Schedule an appointment when you are eligible. Sponsored by Pfizer and BioNTech.
Always streaming wherever you are on the Odyssey app. Make the fan.
I grab the wrong mouse every time, dude.
The Rob Brown Show wrapping up our numero dos. If you want to be a part of it, 844-FAN phone, 844-FAN-FONE. That's 844-326-3663. Or text us on the Preferred Home Services text line 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, and we will read those on the air. Real quick, before we get out of there for this hour, Lonzo and I recorded the newest episode of the Views from Mint Street podcast, available now where major podcasts are found, whether that is on Stitcher or Spotify or Google Play or Apple iTunes, or free on the Odyssey app. Wherever you get your major podcasts from, make sure that you subscribe to the Views from Mint Street podcast for the latest on Carolina Panther football. We're going to record another episode tomorrow after the show, and I'll go ahead and tell you, one of the things we're going to be talking about is, and this will shock you, Baker Mayfield in the starting quarterback position. Steve Wilks said that he will not commit to a starting quarterback until Wednesday, until tomorrow. We'll get our starting quarterback named for this weekend's matchup tomorrow. And I will tell you that the next few games for the Panthers are very, very interesting to me. And they are interesting for me because you're kind of in a rock and a hard place here if you're the Panthers. On one hand, you are not out of playoff consideration, right? This division is still winnable right now because Tampa, even though they are getting better, has not pulled away. They are at 500. The Panthers are 2 games back in the division right now, and as of right now, have the tiebreaker over Tampa Bay by win of an outright victory. Still got to go down to Ray J and take them on again, but you are 1-0 against Tampa right now. And the interesting thing here is this division as a whole is now up for grabs, right? The Panthers are 3-8. The Saints are 4-7. The Falcons are 5-6. The Bucs are 5-5. Now, the Falcons and Saints and Panthers all still have the bye left ahead of them. Tampa will get the opportunity to earn another game lead when all of those teams take their bye. But the point is, you're still very much in contention. You go get a win this week against a 3-win Denver team, which is very much a winnable game for Carolina. You go get a win, you move yourself to 4-8. You're not out of the division. Granted, it's very late. Fortunately for Carolina, you are in a trash division top to bottom. The NFC East is led by a 9-win Eagles team, 6-4, the best record in the NFC West, but the 49ers are starting to pull away. The Vikings are 8-2 in the NFC, over in the NFC North. In the AFC, the Dolphins and Bills are both 7 wins and are trailed by the Patriots and Jets, who both have 6 wins in the East. The AFC West, the 8-win Chiefs lead that division. The Ravens are 7-3, leading the AFC North, and the Titans are 7-3, leading the AFC South. You're in a garbage division, and that's the fortunate part. On the flip side, every win that you get as you chase down the NFC South leading Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what I do think will be a futile effort at the end of the year, hurts you in terms of getting draft positioning down the line, right? Every other team that's going to be fighting for a top draft pick, the 3-8 Bears, the 3-7 Rams out of the NFC, the 4-win Cardinals, the 4-win Packers, the 3-win Broncos, the 3-win Steelers, the 1-win Texans, the 3-win Jaguars. Every game Carolina goes out and wins, looking to try to catch up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC South, puts you a game behind, or puts you a draft spot behind the rest of those teams. So what do? Do you go find the quarterback that's going to give you the best chance to win? Is it Baker? Is it PJ? Is it Darnold? Who knows? Or Did he go in a different direction? I don't know. We're going to break that down tomorrow on the Views from Industry podcast. Yesterday's episode in which we break down the Baltimore game is up. If you want to give it a listen, we got 1 hour left. We'll hit it full speed when we come back on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate.
Oh my god, I hate when it does that.
What's that?
I will click out here and it won't go where I want it to be.
Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you are switching to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. I'm Mark Ryan. If you're like me, you're no interior decorator and you need a good pumps. I'm beyond grateful I met my friends at Smith & James.
That's what you want. I'm excited about.
Look like I know what I'm doing.
Pull up on the next advancement. Shop with Justin Jefferson last year on the show.
So much more.
Hey,
there's nothing quite like surprising.
no, not at all. All right, that's probably coming. I'm going to NFL Power Rankings after we get a CBS Sports Crew update from Shane Burke.
We'll fix you any cocktail you want. I'll have an old fashioned. Now you can with the Bartesian home cocktail maker. Bartesian is a sleek machine the size of a coffee maker that makes premium cocktails at the touch of a button. Choose from over 50 different
Or
cocktails.
you can choose to have your parts delivered right to your door with free shipping on most
bars today. You'll always get freshly mixed, perfectly balanced cocktails with the Bartesian cocktail maker. And now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever at bartesian.com/cocktail. Entertaining? The Bartesian is ideal for parties. No need to stock all kinds of individual mixers for complicated recipes. Every guest gets the cocktail of their choice in seconds. The Bartesian makes a wonderful gift for anyone who loves a fine premium cocktail. Now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever. It's available right now, only at bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail for Bartesian's best deal ever. Only at bartesian.com/cocktail.
The Upstate Holiday Light Show opens Thanksgiving night at Greenville Picnic Speedway. Drive through a nighttime Christmas wonderland as 32 million colors set the sky ablaze, synchronized to the music of your favorite holiday classics. UpstateLights.com. Dancing crew, flip the tune, nail the final interview. Game done. Randy Moore. Come give it the more you want to do, the more
Can we be right back real quick?
Yep. Hang out, stream. Be right back. The third, the final, the best, the money hour of the Rob Brown Show goes now. This is the Fan Upstate. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is great to be with you. I am Rob Brown. My man T2, Tim Snow, the Timinator, is filling in for the great one, Lonzo, out on vacation this week. A very well-earned vacation, if you ask me, for the great one. Glad to have T2 along for the ride here as we are in the midst of the World Cup right now. The Americans yesterday decided, because reasons, that for whatever reason, they wanted to stop attacking the Welsh defense and allow Wales to come to us. And it bit us quite squarely in our asses at the end. A 1-1 draw would be the final yesterday, which brings us to 1 point, second place on the table, tied with Wales because of 1 point and no goal differential to separate us. And now, and this is what I was afraid of. This is what I was afraid of yesterday. I was afraid of ending up in a situation where now we find ourselves in a 2-game competition with Wales, right? Like beating Wales outright, I feel like we're in a really, really good spot moving forward. You beat Wales outright, I feel like we're in a very good spot moving forward because our prime competition, which were the Welsh, finds themselves in a hole. We're up 3 points, which means that Wales now has to beat England in their final match, assuming that we would have gotten past Iran. Even with a draw with England or even a loss to England, you're probably favored at that point with a match against the weakest in the group in Iran to culminate our 3-game group play schedule. You find yourself in a spot where 6 points is the reality. And the only way for the Welsh to get 6 would be they would have to go back-to-back dubs over Iran and then England on the way out. Now, maybe that bites you in the backside because if England beats the U.S. in game number 2 and is sitting on 6 points, unless the Americans would have beaten Wales and would have gotten the full 3 against England, which is unlikely, you end up in a spot where we are now, which is that we now have to, I think you kind of have to play for the draw against England. You'd like to walk out of there level with England and come away with a point to give you 2. Wales in game number 2 against Iran probably gets the 3, meaning we would trail 3 points to 2, but Wales would also catch England in their final game, which is likely an L. The Americans catch Iran, which should be, and if it's anything less than 3 points, I would call it a major disappointment. But it sets up the Americans for the ability to go earn those 3 points and to move out of this group on their own feet. Now you find yourself in a 2-game competition. U.S. v. England, U.S. v. Wales, and Wales versus England and Wales versus Iran. What this essentially sets you up is kind of a proxy war of points against Wales, right? Because now the game is not who goes and gets 6, because I don't think either of us are taking 6 out of the final 2 games. The American team we saw yesterday is not beating England, should beat Iran, unless we do something dumb and completely change our mentality in the midst of a lead again. But the game is now, how many do you beat Iran by for both the U.S. and Wales? And how many do you lose to England by? Because it is looking more and more like both the U.S. and Wales will walk out of this with 4 points, right? The Americans take 1 point from Wales, should beat Iran and get the full 3, that's 4. Wales walks out with a point against the Americans and should beat Iran, that's 4. Both of us should both lose to England. Now, it's the World Cup and you never know what the hell's going to happen. Like this morning when Saudi Arabia knocked off defending South American champs and one of the hefty favorites to lift the World Cup trophy in Argentina. A 2-1 victory for the Saudis. They were able to net 2 at the end. Messi gets a goal off of the PK. But the question mark now becomes, how many do the Americans beat Iran by versus how many do the Welsh beat Iran by, and how many do the Americans lose to England by versus how many do the Welsh lose to England by? Because I think goal differential is going to be which pushes one of these two teams by, right? If the Americans have the greater goal differential after England and Iran, which again, I think what you're kind of hoping is, and this may bite us as well, but you're going to catch Iran likely coming off of 2 straight losses, right? Likely coming off of 2 straight losses between England and Wales in game number 2, which means the Iranians, knowing that they are already eliminated next Friday? No, sorry, Tuesday. Next Tuesday. We got Friday, we got England. Next Tuesday, we got Iran. If it works out the way it's expected to, and it's sports, sometimes it doesn't, but if it works out the way we're expecting it to, that means that when we play Iran next Tuesday, we are likely going to find ourselves in a position where the Iranians know they are eliminated, and what are they playing for? National pride, right? They're just playing for pride at that point. And I know that, again, politics and sports, we keep politics out of sports as much as we can, but there are places where sports and real life overlap. It's a Venn diagram, not 2 individual bubbles. Keep in mind that the Iranians in match number 1 against England before they took on England, the Iranian men's national team did not participate in their country's national anthem in a show of support for the massive social protests that are going on in Iran right now against their effectively theocracy, right? So not only are they playing for national pride, but they are, and they know this, I think, playing as a bright spot in the midst of what is a terrifying point in history in their country, in Iran right now. So they understand that the eyes of Iran are on them. It's a nice break, right? When everything was going on with the unrest in our country over the BLM movement, et cetera, sports was the breakaway. And again, I know that sports is the breakaway, right? I understand that sports is the breakaway. I understand that this is the escape from reality that we all look forward to. But that makes sports more important. And the Iranian football team understands that, which is why they did what they did before they played England, which is why in game 3, when they face elimination, or perhaps already have been eliminated from World Cup group play and will not be eligible to move on to the knockout round, you suspect that they are going to come into that game exceptionally motivated. I go back to, for instance, and although it was a completely different set of circumstances, go back to when the United States women's national team played Japan in the Women's World Cup final a few years back. Japan, of course, had that massive tsunami, a massive loss of life. Obviously, Japan was playing as a very unified front at that point, and they wore us out because emotion breeds adrenaline, right? When you are playing on emotion, and when you are playing for a fellow group of men or women that are within your tribe, you tend to elevate that emotion, which means you pop a little extra adrenaline in that game. Japan beat the U.S. Women's World Cup team, which, by the way, was a favorite going into that game. And a larger chunk of the reason was because of that emotion, right? Iran is going to be playing a very emotional final game at the World Cup. Likely will have already been eliminated, as I suspect Wales will take the full 3 points away in game number 2 when they take on Iran. So it's not a granted. It's not a given. It is not something that you can walk into expecting the 3 points. It is going to be a tough game against a team that has a lot of emotion, a lot of energy, a lot of adrenaline. And I think there's something to that. So I think if you were the Americans, that makes a draw against England almost a must, right? Almost a must. If you give the full 3 to England, it does two things. Number one, it pretty much automatically promotes England, right? Because England was 6 points. The worst they can do at that point will be 6 points. And it creates a situation where, considering they are way more than likely to move on, they probably don't give their best against the Welsh in Group 3. The Welsh may be able to steal a win away from England in that final game. And if they are able to do that, then the Welsh would get their points, likely 5. It would create a situation where we are going to end with 4 and getting bumped, right? So because of that, I think a draw against England is almost a mandatory necessity. I think you got to get it. But again, my question is, do we trust Greg Berhalter in this situation to be able to pull that off, right? What is our best bet at making that happen? Full-on attacking football, right? Send guys forward. I understand that Greg Berhalter's whole thing is, let's go out there and own the time of possession. Let's keep the ball with us. Let's break them down tactically based on owning the football, owning possession. Don't let them have the ball to establish their offensive identity. Make them play in front of us. Keep them in front of us by owning the football. But the reality is, when you adopt that mentality, you take away from what I think is the Americans' greatest asset, of course, which is speed. We saw that speed on display early in that game against Wales. We saw the attack pushing the ball forward, sending numbers and sending our best athletes into the attacking third, created spots where Wales early was playing on the back foot. We played on the back foot. It led to the Timothy Weah goal early. It put Welsh in a spot where they had to change up their tactics. They had to be more aggressive. And as far as I'm concerned, made them more susceptible to getting beat by a pressing offense. But we didn't do that. We didn't press the offense. Instead, when Wales started pushing forwards, we fell back. We fell back to the bulwarks. We fell back to the readout. We created a situation where we allowed them to throw numbers at us. And realistically speaking, and the level of top flight soccer that the World Cup is at right now, when you allow them to throw numbers at you, when you allow them to create the offensive momentum that forces your team to play back in front of their goal, the law of averages is going to catch up with you. Now, the Walker-Zimmerman foul on Gareth Bale that gave them the PK, that allowed Gareth Bale to hit an absolute missile into the back of the net. Matt Turner did everything right. The ball just had so much pace on it that there was nothing he can do, right? 90% of that dudes in that spot are going to hit that same ball, but it's going to be moving about 70% of the pace that Gareth Bale put on it. 90% of balls hit with 70% of the pace on it are going to get blocked because Matt Turner did everything right. He read it right. He committed correctly. He committed to the right side. He just could not get enough of a mitt on it to push it out of play, or else we win that game as well. It's not on Matt Turner. That foul was on Walker-Zimmerman, and it was a bad one. Gareth Bale is facing away from the goal. He's moving out towards the edge of the box, and you tried to go through him with a bad decision and a bad tackle. Bad execution all around, and it cost the Americans, right? Well, in a game against the very good Wales team, and speaking of emotion, a Welsh team playing with a hell of a lot of it, first time that they have been in the World Cup in 6.5 decades, you know that they, at that moment, were playing on emotion because they knew as well, if the Americans take a full 3 points away from that match, the Americans are moving on and the Welsh are going home, right? The Welsh at that point would have had to beat England in game number 2, and that's a huge ask. Huge ask. The English would have had 3. The Americans would have had 3. The Americans also have early the positive goal differential, which is tiebreaker number 2 in the World Cup group play elimination process. A win yesterday all but assures that England and the Americans go through with anything shy of a complete and total meltdown by the Americans against Iran, right? Which I wouldn't bank on. I wouldn't put money on that. So it's disappointing. And it's not just disappointing because of the draw. It's the World Cup. Draws are going to happen. It's going to happen to the best of us. The disappointing part is how the draw happened. That game was in the bag. That game was in the bag, and for whatever reason, we stopped doing what worked. We stopped doing what worked, and we started doing things that were the opposite of that, frankly. I don't get it. I didn't understand it then. I thought, let me sleep on it. I'll wake up tomorrow. Maybe I'll have some clarity on the situation. Turns out, I don't understand. I still don't understand. With 12 hours of thought and with a good night's sleep between, I still don't understand what happened. I got nothing for you. Nothing for you. All right, American soccer fans, what's your thoughts? What went wrong yesterday? 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. Text us on the Preferred Home Services text line at 71307, 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N. We will read them on the air. Let's take a break. When we come back, it is technically Thursday for us as we are going to be off tomorrow. Scratch that. Thursday for Thanksgiving, Friday for La Familia time. I am out next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So we got a lot of college football and NFL to break down for this weekend. And that's next on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate. You're good, buddy. Get you some jumping jacks.
South Carolina, I'm sorry. I didn't believe you on Saturday night. I'm sorry I took the under 6.5 wins on the regular season in a bet that was Nobody can take it away from you. In so doing, you have reached a checkpoint where you've undoubtedly leveled up the program. It was impossible to absorb the emotion and win on Saturday night and not go forward. Credit Shane Beamer for instilling belief in a fan base and a program that people believe in itself. Credit the fan base for showing out for a game everyone knew was going to be a blowout. Well, it was. And congratulations on rebounding from the Florida game in the best way anyone could by making us all forget it ever happened. Cheers to you and all respect you the pain today is earned. Please accept my most sincere apology. Sincerely, Mark Ryan.
Smoke Sides with Mark Ryan this afternoon 3 to 7 on the Fan Upstate. 97.7 FM Greenville, 97.1 FM Spartanburg, and on the Odyssey app.
Are you suffering from chronic joint pain like Heather?
I have terrible arthritis and have had it for quite a while, and I've gone to all kinds of doctors trying to figure out what to do, and everybody just said surgery. And surgery is like months of rehab, and I didn't want to do that.
But then Heather discovered QC Kinetics, local medical professionals who specialize in natural biologic treatments, non-invasive solutions designed to repair and restore damaged tissue in your joints. And she absolutely loves the results.
I like to tell anybody who's suffering that there are options that are not steroids, that are not surgery. You owe it to yourself to find out about QC Kinetics and find out what they can do for you.
No surgery, no drugs, no downtime. Discover QC Kinetics and learn more about natural biologic treatments with lasting results.
Call QC Kinetics, 864-448-3772. That's 864-448-3772. Don't wait. Call QC Kinetics today, 864-448-3772.
How would you like to come home to a bartender who will fix you any cocktail you want? I'll have an old-fashioned.
That would be awesome.
Now you can. With the Bartesian home cocktail maker. Bartesian is a sleek machine the size of a coffee maker that makes premium cocktails at the touch of a button. Choose from over 50 different cocktails, from classics to the most exotic premium cocktails served in the best bars today. You'll always get freshly mixed, perfectly balanced cocktails with the Bartesian cocktail maker. And now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever at bartesian.com/cocktail. Entertaining? The Bartesian is ideal for parties. No need to stock all kinds of individual mixers or complicated recipes. Every guest gets the cocktail of their choice in seconds. The Bartesian makes a wonderful gift for anyone who loves a fine premium cocktail. Now get Bartesian's best Black Friday deal ever. It's available right now, only at bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail for Bartesian's best deal ever. Only at bartesian.com/cocktail.
Everyone is original, so we offer over 20 fresh ingredients. Burritos, tacos, and quesadillas as unique as you. So come in today for your one-of-a-kind meal.
Reply to messages.
Yeah, I got a buddy of mine I'm talking to about some soccer takes.
When detergent by itself can't cut it, use new Downy Rinse and Refresh. With the breakthrough odor removing formula, it removes the worst in one wash, better than the leading value detergent in 3 washes, keeping all your laundry fresh. Now you can break the cycle of rewashing.
I went home last night and just passed out.
Dude, I was asleep at 8:30 last night. That never happens.
I think it's because we stayed up so late on Saturday.
Education Lottery Retailer, and get your ticket today. CSCEducationLottery.com for jackpot.
I had to do
in the
that
store near you.
How did I get it?
I don't know. Let it roll now. Dude, we are so jacked up about the third hour. We decided to just start it over again. Just start the whole hour over again, ladies and gentlemen. The Rob Brown Show's on your radio. It is the Fan Upstate. All right, so college football. By the way, real quick, I'm not gonna talk more World Cup here, but I did get asked the question how the group stage tiebreakers, like if two teams end with the same amount of points, what are the group stage tiebreakers? And it goes this way. The first one is goal differential. So you will take the number of goals you did score, the number of goals that you allowed. You would subtract the number of goals allowed away from the number of goals scored. And whoever has the bigger number remaining moves on at that point. The second tiebreaker is the number of goals that are scored overall. So at that point, you would take away goals allowed, and the team that scored the most goals overall will move on. So if you say scored 6 and you allowed 2, your goal differential is 4, right? If another team scored 7 but allowed 3, their goal differential is also 4. That would be the same. So the team that scored 7, by way of scoring more goals, would move on. If that number is tied, then it would move to a head-to-head performance. If the head-to-head performance was a draw, as our was Wales, so this is with Wales, so this is very much in play. We would move on to the next tiebreaker, which becomes goal differential in matches between tied teams. Now, this one only works if you get that far down and have a 3-way tie. If not, then it would go to goals scored in matches between tied teams. Also would need a spot where you would have 3 teams tied. If those 2 go off, then we go down to tiebreaker number 6. And that is a fair play tiebreaker. It is relatively rare, but we have seen it come into play. If all the other tiebreakers are exhausted, the team with the better disciplinary record in the group stage moves on, meaning that whoever had fewer cards would move on. As of right now, that would be the Americans. If I recall correctly, the Welsh had 3 yellow cards shown. The Americans had 2. Yeah, nope, sorry, we picked up one at the end. So actually that one would get out of the way. And then if we have the same amount of cards, now granted that takes into consideration the entire round, right? So all 3 games combined. But if we are tied out of that, literally they will draw out of a bowl. They will put all the tied teams into a bowl out of a group, which again could come into play. A committee member will select one of those balls, read the name, and whoever's name they draw will move on, which is dumb and stupid, and I hate it. All right? But hey, soccer. And with the integrity, and I use that word very, very loosely, of FIFA, I would not be excited about that. All right. 29 minutes played between Mexico and Poland, by the way, and we are in a scoreless draw as of right now between those two. I will update you on that game as we get towards the end of the radio broadcast. I want to take a little bit of a look now at the upcoming weekend in college football because obviously rivalry week. This is mucho importante at this point. We do have a little bit of football tonight. Ball State at Miami of Ohio, Bowling Green at Ohio, a little Tuesday night action. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, Thanksgiving night. Obviously, Thanksgiving going to be filled with NFL football, but there is a big-time bowl game on Thursday night. It is the Egg Bowl when Mississippi State travels and takes on Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Running Rebels. You got nothing to do Thursday night? It'll be a fun one to check out. Friday night, we got a lot of football Friday night as well. How about a top 25 matchup with the Cincinnati Bearcats hosting number 21 Tulane, the Green Wave, baby. That one's going to be at noon on Friday. Baylor in Texas is at noon on Friday as well. Arizona State v. Arizona is in Tucson. The Wildcats hosting this one. That one should be interesting as well. And then the North Carolina Bowl as NC State visits UNC. This is a big one. Top 25 matchup in the ACC. And I will tell you right now that the Clemson Tigers are big North Carolina fans in this one. All right? You've already beat NC State, and then they dropped off. They don't help you that much. North Carolina remaining as a one-loss team into the ACC championship. If Clemson beats a North Carolina team that beats a top 25 NC State team, and you beat them in Charlotte next Saturday in the ACC title game, your resume looks a little stronger, right? And if Clemson gets the help they need in order to jump in, one of the things that you will need, especially if LSU somehow finds a way to beat Georgia, they won't, but if they do, and you're going to go, all right, you got a one-loss ACC champion who knocked off a one-loss ACC runner-up versus a two-loss SEC champion in LSU, the resume might come into play a little bit. And Clemson's would look better with a North Carolina win over NC State, followed by Clemson beating them in the ACC championship game. Big NC State fans on Friday are the Clemson Tigers. Arkansas is at Missouri. Nebraska's at Iowa. UCLA v. Cal is at 4:30. And then a couple of games on Saturday night. Another one that Clemson fans have a direct rooting interest in. Florida is at Florida State down in Tallahassee. Big FSU fans are the Clemson Tigers in this one as well, because you're looking at an AP top 25 team in FSU. Another win down in Tallahassee that if Florida State can win out and be a 9-3 team at the end of the year. They cannot play for the ACC title game, but a 9-3 FSU team that would likely threaten. I don't know if they would sneak in, but would threaten being a top 10 team. That would become a much more impressive road win for the Clemson Tigers. That would, again, boost the resume just a little bit. That game's 7:30 on Friday. Then we get to Saturday. Georgia, number 1 team in the country, batting leadoff at noon. They are at home against Georgia Tech, and I know they beat Kentucky 16-6. That game was never in doubt. That game was never in doubt. That game was always in Georgia's favor. But as I pointed out on the show yesterday in response, Georgia doesn't need style points. They don't want style points. They just want wins, right? Georgia has a greater than 99% chance to get in, okay? A greater than 99% chance to get in. They are in. They are not losing to Tech. They could win this game 3-2, and they're still going in. It doesn't matter. So I wouldn't necessarily look for Georgia to run up 63, but Georgia at like 30% is going to beat Georgia Tech by 3 touchdowns. Easy. Then at noon, you got 2 big ones next to each other to go on top of that. At noon in Columbus, the Buckeyes host the Wolverines, the biggest game on Saturday. Somebody is punching a ticket to the playoffs as a result of this game. This is winner take all. And as I've said a number of times, with LSU taking on Georgia in the SEC championship, with the potential for Clemson, if they beat South Carolina and North Carolina, to be a 1-loss ACC champion, I do think that a Big Ten runner-up with a loss will go behind a 1-loss ACC champion, even if they went wire-to-wire top 4 and then lost at the very end. And I think a 2-loss SEC champion will go in over a 1-loss Big Ten championship non-participant. That game's huge. That game is huge, dude. Huge. All right. So keep an eye on that one. And then obviously also at noon. And you gotta hate this for them. You gotta hate this for them. How about, oh, by the way, and Texas, you're right. I completely blanked. North Carolina lost this weekend. Never mind. What the hell's wrong with me? I knew that. What an L, 21-17, the Yellow Jackets put on Carolina. Never mind. I think I bleached that from my memory because it was the biggest WTF of the whole weekend. Good call, Texter. All right. You're still rooting for North Carolina, right? You're still pulling for NC. You want that SOS to look as good as it can if you're Clemson. But you also got to get by the Gamecocks. Texter says, the best option is Clemson getting their ass handed to them by both Carolinas, and we can stop talking about them. Again, 2 touchdown favorites over the Gamecocks. But Tennessee was 22-point favorites over the Gamecocks and got smoked. So who the hell knows? I just know Saturday at noon, there's nowhere I'm going to be but parked in front of the biggest television in Pensacola, Florida, watching that game. Also at noon, West Virginia is at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State choked it up again. What happened to the Cowboys, man? Like, I know that they were always a team with no defense, and they lost by 3 to TCU, but how do you turn around and get blanked by Kansas State 48-0 and get run off the field 37-16 to Kansas and then get beat by a bad Oklahoma team? That's terrible, Cowboys. That's terrible. Army's at UMass at noon. What else we got in that? Coastal Carolina at James Madison's at noon. And I'm trying to just pick through the games that matter the rest of the ride. Louisville versus Kentucky. That's a fun rivalry. It's a basketball rivalry predominantly, but you better believe it translates onto the football field. That one is going to take place later in the day. Auburn at Alabama is at 3:30. Oregon at Oregon State in the bleep your television setup bowl. I don't know if they're going to go colored unis again on both sides. I hope they do. Remember, I think it was 2-3 seasons ago. 2-3 seasons ago that Oregon wore their lime green and Oregon State wore orange. My retinas hurt after watching that game. Wake Forest at Duke at 3:30 as well. Let's see. Utah's at Colorado. Blah. Michigan State's at Penn State. I don't know if that one's interesting or not, right? I don't know if that one's interesting or not. Penn State is sitting at 9-2. Their only losses are to Michigan and Ohio State. They should be hefty favorites in that one, the Nittany Lions, because Michigan State gave all that money to Mel Tucker, and he paid them off by losing to Washington, Minnesota, Maryland, Ohio State, Michigan, and Indiana somehow. Penn State should be fine. LSU is at Texas A&M at 7 p.m. It's a big one for LSU, right? LSU wants to build a little momentum before next Saturday's SEC championship game. They want to build that momentum. They've got to build that momentum if they want to crack at Georgia. Tennessee's at Vandy. That should be a runoff game. Notre Dame USC at 7:30 is another big one, right? USC has 3 back-to-back-to-back top 25 opponents. If they beat all 3 and win the Pac-12, recency bias could keep SC in and Clemson out. Big Notre Dame fans are the Clemson Tigers this weekend too. You need USC to vacate out of there. And you don't want it to come down to the Pac-12 championship to make it happen. That's a massive one that you are big Notre Dame fans. Not only does it clear USC out of the way for you, Clemson, but it would also end up making your loss against ND, which, by the way, already gets you some style points. It would make it look that much better as well. That's a big one for Clemson fans. Pitt is at Miami, and we wrap it all up at 11 o'clock with BYU versus Stanford. Virginia Tech obviously canceled after the tragic shooting that left 3 Cavalier football players dead earlier in the week, or I should say end of last week. Virginia Tech have mutually decided to cancel that game, and I got no problem with that decision. None at all with that decision. So that, ladies and gentlemen, that is where we stand with our college football weekend. I like SC over Notre Dame. Notre Dame's been playing better football. So is SC, and nobody's talking about him. Caleb Williams has looked much better, and nobody's talking about him. And that's fine for the Trojans. No doubt about it. We'll see if they can slip in there at the end. Clemson, South Carolina's huge. Michigan, Ohio State's the biggest game of the weekend. Both of those games at noon. Looking forward to them. Let's take, ladies and gentlemen, our final break of Tuesday. And when we come back, this is kind of out of left field, okay? This is kind of out of left field, but I don't even want to bring it up. I don't even know if it matters. NASCAR just made a decision today, or yesterday, I should say, that I think hurts them a little bit. And at a point in time where, look, they turned good numbers. We talked about this last week. They turned pretty good numbers against college football the last 2 weekends of their season. But they just made a decision that makes it harder to access NASCAR races. And I'll never understand it. I'll never get it. I'll tell you what that is, and then we'll wrap up the show next. Rob, T2, you, The Rob Brown Show, the Fan Upstate.
With your sports flash on the Fan Upstate. Big playoff matchup this Saturday afternoon for Furman football. They start off with Elon. It's a noon kickoff. The Paladins earned an at-large bid to the 2014 FCS playoff field. Paladins 9-2 this season, 7-1 in the Southern Conference. Elon 8-3 overall, 6-2 in the CAA. We'll have all the action on the Fan Upstate pregame at 10:30. Furman basketball plays this Friday afternoon. They'll take on Tusculum. It's a 2:00 tip. Paladins beat South Carolina 79-60 on Sunday. The Carolina Panthers host the Denver Broncos this Sunday. Carolina's 3-8. The 3-7 Broncos have lost 2 in a row. Safety Kenny Robinson is back with the team. He was signed to the practice squad Monday. It's the 3rd time the third-year safety has been added back to the group this season. He appeared in 19 games for the Panthers between 2020 and 2021. Catch every Carolina Panthers game live on Classic Rock.
3's a solid number, Steven. 3's a solid number. I am a massive turkey fan on Thanksgiving Day. I have very much already worn the fam. Not that they didn't know this already. very much already warned the fam, La Familia, that every time that I hear the word tryptophan on Thursday, I'm going to eat more turkey so that I can pass out and sleep through it.
In Mexico City, Jimmy Garoppolo throwing for 228 yards and 4 scores, including 2 to George Kittle and 2 to Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel adding a 39-yard rushing touchdown as San Francisco moves to 6-4 and first in the NFC West with a tiebreaker over Seattle. Meanwhile, Kyler Murray missed his second straight game with a hamstring injury as Arizona falls to 4-7. The Broncos waiving running back Melvin Gordon. He fumbled 5 times. The Bears quarterback Justin
You gonna do trending topics?
in Sunday's loss to the Falcons.
Yeah, we probably should. We didn't do it yesterday.
We did not.
Forgot about it.
Kyle Pitts on IR. He is believed to have suffered a torn MCL, according to Rappaport. This has been NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network.
Did you hear about Taco Bell's apology? Yeah, they apologized for going too far with the breakfast. Like the naked egg taco and chicken.
What's happening?
All you need in the morning is tasty, simple food. Like the breakfast crunch wrap. Fluffy eggs, melted cheese, sausage.
Hive Social. I don't know what that is.
Or as some call it, a breakfast crunch thing. Grab one today, only at Taco Bell. At participating U.S. Taco Bell stores during breakfast hours ending until 11 a.m. While supplies last, contact local store for hours and participation.
What?
This Black Friday, where do prices drop and meet upgrade your home shopping? Save big this holiday on some big home appliances, like a limited time Samsung.
What are you looking at so damn entertaining, Tim Snow?
The trending topics. Can I say Tampax on the air?
Yeah, all right.
Okay. I think that's a political one, though, but it's just funny. What is that, Chicharito? Did I say that right?
Chicharito, yes. He is a member of the Mexican national football team.
Hey, you know what? I said it right. I'm
Chicharito.
happy about myself. Chicharito.
Hell of a player, too. Frustratingly good player.
Hashtag Activision. What? I have a lot of game trending stuff on here, so it's my only Twitter account. I mean, I have other ones. I use them every so often. I just don't fool with Twitter that much because it got too political there for a while.
Ain't missing nothing.
My gaming stuff does well in Twitter, though, which is surprising.
To apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you.
But I haven't posted for game stuff in a while, so been so busy. But I got a new game today that I'm going to stream.
What'd you get? What'd you get?
Oh, Tactics Ogre Reborn. And get this, it's very much like D&D.
I like it.
I grew up playing Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yep. Are we just starting the show again?
Why is it doing that when I put the rejoin in there? All right, I'm gonna have to check that rotator. Maybe I might have accidentally done it.
Third hour so good, we're starting it again. Why not? Run it back one more time. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The Rob Brown Show is on your radio. It is the Fan Upstate. Rapidly approaching halftime and a really, really good game between Mexico and Poland. 45 minutes played, 2 minutes of additional time stuck on to the end, and we remain in a scoreless 0-0 draw as it stands right now. This is a massive game in Group C. Massive game in Group C. Mexico is advanced, I think, each of the last 5 World Cups out of the group. But if they walk out of here with 1 point or no points, it would do some damage to El Tri. Poland, on the other hand, Not under Robert Lewandowski, the same team they have been in years past, but certainly have aspirations to be promoted out of this group. So we'll be watching this one. I'm probably going to stick around after the show's over and finish this one out because it is really got a lot of good back and forth so far. Both teams have had a number of scoring opportunities and just not been able to find the back of the net yet. Mexico is perfectly content to try to get the ball in the box from about 40 yards out and then just see if they can make something happen on the rebound. Have been unsuccessful thus far, but we will find out. All right, we talked a little bit about this on the way out. I'm intrigued by this. NASCAR sent out an email to folks that are subscribed to what I think was one of the coolest features that you could get. All right. NASCAR had a feature on their website that allowed you to subscribe to their website and get live audio from scanners, right? That is to say, they had scanners hooked up to all the radios, and you could go to their website and you could log in and you could pick your car. And when you did, you could listen to the radio transmissions into and out of that car live during races. And I always thought that was I thought that was a spectacular product provided by NASCAR, right? I mean, in no other sport, I don't think, do you get that access. Like one of the things that for a long time, a lot of us have very much enjoyed is when the NFL and college football goes mic'd up, right? They stick a mic on a player, they stick a mic on a coach, and they give you the live audio from that player, from that coach that you can go listen to, you can hear it, and you can follow what is being said on the benches, on the sidelines, on the field during the game. And there have been some really interesting moments presented by that, right? There have been some really interesting moments presented from coaches, from players. You get to hear players calling stuff out on the field. I've always loved it. NASCAR, I think, provided you with easily the most in-depth version of that, really, of any sport, right? They gave you the ability to listen. I mean, imagine at a football game, if you could pop in a headset and listen to what the starting quarterback had to say, listen to what the middle linebacker had to say, listen to what the head coach had to say, listen to what the position coaches had to say, listen to what the general manager had to say, right? Imagine having that much access. Imagine having that much access to those guys, having that much access to the play, to the team like that. NASCAR provided that, and it costed you a nominal fee. Like, right? Like if you're a Clemson fan, how much would you pay per month to have a mic stuck on Dabo and DJ and be able to listen to everything that they were saying, everything that they were talking about during the game? I'd pay a lot of money to be able to do that, yeah? I'd pay a lot of money to be able to do that. NASCAR presented that, and now they've decided to take it away. Now, if you want to do that, and they're still going to offer it, but now if you want to do that, it will only be available through the purchase of a NASCAR mobile app subscription on iOS and Android. Now, I'm glad I still have the access to that, but if I'm sitting at the house on Sunday watching the Daytona 500, right? I don't want to have to kill off the battery on my cell phone. I don't want to have to kill the battery on my phone to be able to listen to something that it used to be, like $4 or $5 a month. Hell, $25 a month, $40 a month. I don't care if I'm that big of a NASCAR fan. To just pull it up on the website, right? Switch between cars. The audio is nearly as good as live. On the mobile app, it's not. And I've used it in the past. On the mobile app, the scanner audio is coming in, 40, 45 seconds behind the race. And while that may not seem like the biggest thing in the world, if you're watching the race live and you're getting the audio 40 seconds after it happens, it's like it doesn't really have the same impact, right? Doesn't have the same impact. I have got a streaming service I use. And when I hook it up to my Bluetooth speaker, my Bluetooth audio is always about 3 seconds behind the show that I'm watching on TV or on my phone. It's annoying as hell. It's hard to keep up. That's what this race is going to be, and I hate it. Why would you take away a feature that you could charge and give people a level of effectively unprecedented access to a product that is already hard enough to access in NASCAR? Why would you take that away? This is a bad decision. Ladies and gentlemen, that is how we will end today's radio broadcast. When we come back on tomorrow's show after a 21-hour break, tomorrow is our Friday. If you have not caught it already, we are obviously off on Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving to spend it with the fam. We will then next week have fill-in host on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I will be down in the sunshine state of Florida, spending a few extra Thanksgiving days with the fam, with the little brother, with the nephew. Very much looking forward to that. So I will be out next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We'll have some guest hosts. I will return to you next Thursday and Friday to get you set up for conference championship weekend. And then I will be out. Got a couple of holidays coming up towards the end of December, but we will be out Thursday, Friday. I will be out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and then I will return a week from Thanksgiving. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. Tune in tomorrow, because tomorrow we got to go. It's way early, but we got to go on the record with a big weekend in college and pro football projections and prognostications, and we will do that on tomorrow's edition of the Rob Brown Show. Appreciate Tim Snow filling in for the great one, Lonzo. Views from Mint Street episode dropped yesterday. Another one drops tomorrow. Make sure you're downloaded and subscribe to that, and we will see all of you back here on tomorrow's edition of the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate later, brother. All right, stream. Appreciate you guys. We will see y'all tomorrow.